I've been here about 25 minutes. I'm supposed to be 20. It's 25 minutes closer. And we are out of time. Thank you.
The home of the Lancaster Jethawks with none other than Kaboom. Check it out. They even have jumpers. And they have swag.
We're affordable family fun for all of the Antelope Valley and surrounding areas. And we pride ourselves in what we do, not only between the lines on the field, but what we do off the field.
Santa Clarita is a youth sports community. They love their sports down there. And the nice thing about it is that we just, like Will said, we have promotions, we do fun stuff, fireworks shows, kids can play catch on the field, things like that. And it's a lot of things that you can't get other places.
We don't run this team, the community runs this team. It's the little leagues that we are part of. It's the charities that we work with.
A family can just go down and get a baseball or a baseball bat from our team store. They can get it signed by every single player that walks into the ballpark. We have a great program for little league teams.
We're a minor league baseball team, but we have major league fun.
These little leaguers will always remember the player who they went out with, and sometimes they become superstars and major leaguers, and that's the exciting part about it.
In 1996, when this team came to the Antelope Valley, I'm Antelope Valley born and raised. I was the bat boy on opening day, and I've since obviously been named GM. But one of my fondest memories of here at the ballpark is first-year player Shane Monahan went on to play in the major leagues. Came to my birthday party and gave me an A2000 outfielder's glove. I still own that glove. He's still my favorite player of all time. I'm a Dodger fan, I'm a Jethawk fan, but Shane Monahan, a guy who had basically a cup of coffee in the majors, is my favorite player of all time. It's because I got to meet him as a 13-year-old kid here at the ballpark.
Because of the impact that you can make for your community and the impact that they can make.
100%, yep, and that's our goal.
Do you come to the games all the time?
Like once a month or twice.
Very nice. Tell me what your favorite thing about coming to the Jethawks game is.
Going to Fun Zone and getting Dippin' Dots, also catching foul balls.
Do you get to do that a lot? Awesome.
What the state of California has done is, for the first time, there is a financial incentive for landowners to not cut down their trees.
California has all kinds, shapes, and sizes of trees, but these guys are checking a different category. How much carbon dioxide can they store, and for how long?
What we're going to do is we're going to measure the carbon in the trees and calculate that over 100 years.
If these trees are raised right, their carbon storage can be purchased by companies to help them comply with California's cap-and-trade greenhouse gas emissions reduction program, a key part of the state's effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions back to 1990 levels by 2020.
The river channel will be fairly obvious.
This is a crew of carbon verifiers. They are probably the most visual part of a carefully calculated course of carbon cultivation. This site is on the Yurok Tribal Reservation in Northern California.
They have to account for the amount of carbon that's in their forest. And that amount is then verified by third-party accredited, ARB accredited verifiers. We review that information very thoroughly. We are out on site with the verification bodies. And credits don't come in until actual greenhouse gas sequestration or emission reductions occur.
Well, this is different in that it's not going to be harvested over the long term. We may do a little bit of stand improvement work in here and to improve the timber stand. But the immediate goal of this is for carbon credit production.
Oh, it's a madrone. So old and gnarly and twisted and leaning. So we're making sure that we completely follow the measurement protocol, because these measurements are supposed to be repeatable.
So this is exactly what it looks like. A team of people measuring the width of trees with tape measures and the height with lasers, and counting how many are in each plot.
But this was one of the things they were brought up yesterday. What happens if trees grow into the plot? Weren't big enough to make it the first time, but now they are.
There's a lead verifier, and there's just a regular verifier, and then they work for a verification body, which is an entity.
And because there's now a market, there are also investors and project developers.
We provide project finance, development, and credit sales services for forest landowners that want to participate in the California carbon market. It's a beautiful watershed. This is the Yurok tribe's ancestral homeland, and in part due to the carbon market will be managed through a conservation approach, and they are looking to transition the forest into an older growth forest with improved water quality, improved wildlife habitat.
Here's an opportunity to derive an income stream on your property by not cutting the tree down, but to commit for a long period of time to keep those trees on the stump growing and sequestering carbon. And to me, that is a wonderful win-win story.
Thank you for having me. I've been doing this now for about 5 years. I'm actually a class action lawyer, and I was getting older, and I decided to run for mayor, and I had not a clue about alternative energy, and I actually believed that global warming really was just a plot of the third world, to rob us of our competitive capability. Because I live in a very conservative Republican area, and that's what we believed, because that's what we were told. And who had time to look into it? And then I learned what's really happening in the world. And I learned who you are. Imagine where we are right now. Imagine how exciting it is to be us right now. Because for whatever reason, the first time in history of the world, we have, as a group, have been given a charge to save the world. And we all know, almost every single one of us sitting here, that that is really what we are here to do. It is that powerful of a position. Maybe our fathers experienced it in World War II, when this huge evil was coming down, and they were charged with saving the planet from that. What we are saving the world from is far worse. Far, far worse. And it's much more difficult because they can't see it. But what we have to stay totally focused on is what we have to do is we have to reach out farther than we can see, because it is not us who will pay the price. It is them. And the quality of their life, or whether they even have a life, we are determining now. And it may already be too late, but that is how close we are to determining their future. And the reason it's so hard, and the reason the world has taken so long, a lot of good cognitive science out there, it's because we can't see it. You know, human beings are extremely good at threat assessment. We do that better than any species. We assess threats and respond to it. But we have to see it. And we cannot see this. Imagine for a moment that instead of global warming or climate change, we were talking about way out there is an asteroid. And 98% of the astrophysicists and 98% of the astronomers believe it is on a collision course. And when it lands, it will be horrible. We don't know how horrible, but it will be horrible. Horrors we have yet to imagine. What would we be doing? The world's leaders would come together. We would be building whatever we needed to build to divert the course of that asteroid. Any doubt about that? Is there one person that has any doubt about that? 98% of the world's scientists that are involved in climate tell us this is coming. It's already upon us. We just can't see it. And so we have millions of people denying it. You'll notice I started this out with telling you what heroes you were, right? That was by design. People cannot hear us if we start out negative. I took this course. You know, this is a great time to be alive because you can go on the internet, you can take courses from the best there is, the best professors out there, and it's free. I mean, who ever heard of such a thing? It's absolutely free. And they've designed it in such a way, they took video game technology. You know, why do our kids get addicted to video games? Okay, why do I get addicted to video games? It's because you get a dopamine surge every time you get it right? It's challenging, it's hard, and it steps you up levels, and you get this little dopamine surge. It's a little jolt. So they've taken that neuroscience, and they put it into university courses. Every 10 minutes, you got to take a test. And it's not a very hard test. And you get your little jolt. And you go on for the next 10 minutes. One time I sat there for 6 hours. I mean, they had me. Why is that important to us? It's because most of us in this room have limited abilities to persuade. It's because there's a science to us. You know, we can build buildings. We can do scientific things. But how many other lawyers are in the room? Not too many of us. You know? The teachers know how to do this. Guess what? We no longer have the luxury of that. We no longer have the luxury of living in our own world because there's not too many of us that know what's coming. You can learn how to persuade people very quickly now. That's a course I think everybody should take. You start people out positive, and then you tell them the bad news. You know, I took that course. I'm still a trial lawyer. I took that course and tried a case. It was like, wow. I was 10 times the lawyer. And all I did was talk about their future. You know, what's on your bucket list, you know, when I'm picking the jury. It's just taking them into the future in a positive way. Never talked about the case, never, you know, I did that in the opening. And my wife pointed out, yeah, what you used to do is you used to go, this horrible thing happened to my client, and I want you to give them a bunch of money. And you wondered why they turned their back on you. You know, there was no comfort there. We have to learn how to lead people in the direction away from the Tea Party. And I'm a Republican. I mean, look what's happening to us. You cannot be a hero that's going to save the world without working much harder than you're working today. It is that bad, and there are that few of us. And what's so tragic about it is the science is all on our side. Showtime is doing a 14-hour series on climate change. And they came to Lancaster and had me sit next to the guy from Forbes magazine that's paid by the Koch brothers to say we're all crazy, you know, that it's just man-made. And it was astonishing to me how quickly he crumbled. Because there is no factual support, there's no substance to their argument. And within 10 minutes, he's doing this. You know, he's shaking his finger at me. But yet, knowing all that we know, the problem we have is everybody wants to stay in the comfort zone. I was at Singularity University. It's this thing they have up in Palo Alto about all the tech that's coming, you know, all the great stuff. And one of the guys was saying, you know, we ought to hire all the executives and put 23-year-olds in there because, you know, they understand exponential growth. And I said, that's such, well, you don't need to know what I said. But that's not accurate. You know, what it is executives get there because they have pattern recognition skills. You know, they can recognize patterns, therefore they can predict, so you make them the president, right? All the patterns have changed now, especially in energy. And the reason why Edison is holding on so tight to the old models, and the reason why they think fossil fuel plants are still a good idea, is because that's the models they can succeed with. And it doesn't matter that it might be destroying the Earth, because it's just a little bit that, you know, is accumulating, and they're only responsible for this. But we have to understand, it's not out of malice. It's out of them needing to stay where they can succeed, and that's with the pattern recognitions they know. Read that. I don't need to read it to you. That is, do you know how many millions of people believe this guy? You know, they've seen that program he does. He's got this huge following. I mean, you know, he couldn't be wrong. And he actually said that last year, that it's a Chinese plot. You know how many people believe that? Millions. Millions of Americans believe that. It is not the avarice of the few that is dooming this planet. It is the apathy of the many. And that's where we are failing. I do not miss an opportunity to spread this message. Not one. You turn on my Facebook page, every other thing will be global warming. Every other one. What does your Facebook page look like? We are in a race to save the planet. We cannot falter for a second. It has to be every waking moment. It is that serious. Why are they so apathetic? It's a great book. I think everybody ought to read it. He also did a course on Coursera, actually, that he's out of Duke University. He's one of the world's leading, behavior economists. Worth the course. But he talks about this. It's far in the future. That's the perception. Even though Hurricane Sandy, it's still far in the future. There was a 5-mile wide tornado. And that, was it 5 or 2 miles? I mean, it was so humongously huge. No one had ever seen it before. That was last year. There's a perception that this is something happening in the future. But every day we're learning, no, it may be upon us already. And people are already dying as a result of it. Remember, Hurricane Sandy was a level 1 hurricane. Level 1. Imagine a level 5. Imagine that. New York would have been gone. The idea that it affects others, you know, that really is how people perceive it, is that this isn't going to affect you and I. I love that picture. Not our problem. Hurricane Sandy again. That's the biggest problem we have, is people's refusal to look at the span. Every time I put something on global warming on my Facebook, some jerk gets up there and says, it was colder last year. It was colder last year in Antarctica. You know, they refuse to look at the trend. So now I always just put that up. First thing that goes up, everything I do, it says in the corner, showing why that doesn't make sense. And we really do have to do it visually. You have to show it to them. You can't talk to them about it. They have to see it, because that's how threat assessment works. It's a visual process. They don't see the individuals who are suffering. That picture is actually a climate change picture. What's happening in many parts of the world is the farms are drying up. It's a slow daily process. The thought is that what's happening in the Middle East, the Arab Spring, was caused by huge population masses moving into the cities, off the farms, because the farms are no longer productive. These are governmental systems that barely worked to begin with, and then you doubled them. They were doomed. And so now you have the government gassing their own people, 30,000 people gassed. This particular picture was in Darfur, which is clearly the result of desertification. Is that how you say it? Desertification? You know, more deserts. The guy who took this picture got back in his Range Rover and took off. And a year later, he committed suicide. He just couldn't bear both the world's condemnation and the fact that he left that child to be eaten by a vulture. We have to get people to recognize that it is happening to real people. And we do that visually. And the idea that it's just a drop in a bucket. That's why I'm so proud of the city I live in, is within 5 years, we've taken that drop and we're turning it into a river.
This small city is California's biggest energy boom town, Lancaster, in California's Mojave Desert. It averages about 300 days per year of the most intense sunlight in the country.
We intend to figure out a way to use it the most efficiently than anywhere in the world.
3 years ago, Mayor R. Rex Parris set a net zero power goal to harness the energy from the sun and become 100% power independent. Today, the city is halfway there and produces the most solar power per resident in the state.
We would be the deepest well if you were to imagine that was oil. And what's oil but power? And what is solar but power?
How hard has it been to get people on board with solar energy?
The city has just embraced it.
Solar panels are just about everywhere, on downtown rooftops, at schools. Even the baseball stadium can power itself almost entirely by the sun.
They produce about 97% of the energy that's used in those facilities.
Jason Cottle is the deputy city manager and oversaw the installation of more than 6,000 panels in city buildings. The city leases them from a private company.
We paid 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
We were getting charged from the utility companies about 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So we saved the difference.
It's made a big difference to the city's budget, saving more than $250,000 each year in energy costs. The mayor plans to save even more.
We will be net zero within the next 3 years, and the goal is eventually this city becomes independent of the grid.
And next year, this city takes another step closer toward its net zero goal, with a new law requiring solar panel installation in every single new home. Brandon Scott, CBS News, Lancaster, California.
how... You know, that was fun. You know, it's national news. The Wall Street Journal was fun. All of it's fun. I mean, you know, I love that light. It's warm, you know, until it's too hot. But it does have a downside. But how easy was it? I mean, how stupid was it? How is it that not every city in America where the sun shines doesn't have that ordinance? You know, there's another, you know, Mayor Lee in San Francisco, an amazing guy, even if he is a Democrat. But energy-wise, he's truly amazing. They had a plan where if you wanted to get to the head of the line on commercial buildings, right, you had to be a LEED building, a gold LEED building. Everybody know what that is? Good. And then everybody wanted to get to the head of the line. So now everybody has to be a gold LEED building. Nobody complained. You know, it didn't change the market because everybody had to do it. You know, maybe rents went up a little bit, but everybody had to do it. Same thing with the panels. The next step is I'm going to make houses, gold LEED houses. And I might get a little heat from that, but maybe not. I'm always surprised what I don't get heat from, you know. I just do it and then wait. And I think one time I got pushed back on something, and you know, I got to admit it was a crazy idea. But the selling point of it was, this is the solar map of the United States. Lancaster is the center of the universe when it comes to solar power. Our latitude, longitude, elevation, air quality, wind is all perfect. You know, the reason why the Middle East is not really the best solar environment is because of the dust storms. It covers the panels. You're always having to clean them. You know, they're having trouble getting past that. We don't have that problem. And why we're the center is because we have the distribution capability. That, you know, interconnect is huge. And that initially, how I got involved was eSolar. eSolar was a company conceived in the mind of Bill Gross. Bill Gross did the pay-per-click, made a fortune, you know, and he's super genius, does Idea Lab out of Pasadena. Incredibly bright. His wife is brighter than he is, but I don't tell him that. You know, really bright people. And he came up with the idea with the mirrors. We've had mirrors for a long time. You know, make the turbine spin, I mean, heat it up at the boiler and make the turbine spin. It's been around for a long time. But how do you do it cost effectively? You know, they have those huge mirrors, they break, they get dirty, there's huge problems with them. He made little mirrors, and he did it with the software. It was magnificent. You see where they sit? You notice there's no foundation? You just sit it out in the desert. You can put them anywhere. Pull them off the train, open them up like this. It takes 4 or 5 people to do it, but you open them up like this. 3 wrenches is all you need to put it all together. Imagine that. The whole field, 3 wrenches. Mirror is small enough. You don't have breakage. You don't have wind problems, all kinds of things. The software is the key because it constantly is changing. Regardless of how the Earth moves, constantly changing, you know, to make it centered on. He got it down to 14 cents a kilowatt. We heard that he could do this. 14 months from thinking of the idea to us flipping the switch. He was actually going to let me flip the switch, but I thought, you know, it was kind of his idea. So he flipped the switch. 14 months. Now, we got so many roadblocks from Edison. They don't want this. Any Edison people here? Sorry, but it's true. It takes forever, doesn't it? Forever to get an interconnect. And they do it in ways that create obstacles. I mean, this is how, if I want to build a sewer, say I got a company wants to do a factory, got to do a sewer line. Okay, they fund the sewer line. But when the next factory comes on, they got to pay their share, right? So you can fund it, you can finance it. You can get the banks to lend you the money because you know you're getting it back. It's not how you do it with interconnect. Interconnect is you pay it. No, you don't get paid back when people get on it. You pay it. You know what that does to solar energy production? It's a deliberate obstacle. They know it. I met with them. I'm a class action lawyer. They had a bad experience with me once. And so we had this discussion. And they know that, and they do it anyway. We've got to recognize that people are mouthing it, talking it, but they're not walking it. And we have to start raising hell about that. Because this is not about money. This is not about business. This is about whether or not our grandchildren survive. This is the Lex Hessler, A Beautiful Earth. You see Michael over there? They got this great idea. I mean, you can really make this stuff pay. We can now produce kilowatts, 10 cents a kilowatt. The mirror, oh, that was the other thing. The mirrors, 14 cents. Overnight it changed. Price of PV dropped 67%. Those fields are no longer profitable. We have to be prepared for exponential changes and to be able to respond to those changes in market conditions like we never have before. Overnight, 14 cents became no longer attractive to anybody because now we can do 10 cents and we can lock it in for 20 years. Imagine that. My city, every building, every school, my energy costs are never going to go up 1 cent for 20 years. See the volatility I've gotten rid of? The way we're able to plan now? It doesn't matter to us. We've taken power costs and set it. Now, a lot of people don't want to put these things on their roof because it's a lease. Well, what's going to happen in 20 years? Well, let's talk about that for a second. In 20 years, what are their solar panels worth? Nothing. Are they really going to pay somebody to come get your solar panel? Of course not. You know, it's just a business model. You know, they got to take the lease, they sell it, they make their money. Does everybody have solar panels on their roof? Come on. Of all the places you could be, I mean, it used to be you'd go to a conference if you learned one thing that was really cool, right? No longer the case. Now you can really learn a lot at conferences. You're obviously committed to solar panels. Go back and put some solar panels on your roof. So what they're going to do is they're going to build these solar fields. We're working on the storage, right? Then you build a factory next to it. Zero carbon footprint. Whatever products come out of that factory, zero carbon footprints. Do you know what people pay for what is essentially a Toyota Corolla, but they call it a Prius? I mean, when you think about it, people want to buy products that aren't destroying this planet. The thing I told Kevin McCarthy, 51% of all Republicans believe industrial waste is causing this planet's climate change. 51% of Republicans. This idea that people don't believe it is not nearly as great as they've sold it to us. But we're making a lot of mistakes. As much as Obama is doing, we're attempting to solve this problem from the centralized government down. Guess what? He doesn't write building permits. I do. And that's where the hang-up is. Every one of you come from towns and cities and have some contact with city officials, don't you? Don't you all know who a council member is and all that? Listen, I know this stuff. The building industry, if a town is growing, they run that council. Whether you know it or not, you do. That council will turn flips for you. And if you're not asking, what are you doing to save the planet? What are your plans to get to net zero? What are your plans to lower the energy use of your city? It's not on their radar screen. It has to come from you. Interestingly enough, the BIA, the Building Industry of America, you know, when I did this thing, I was expecting, maybe I might not be mayor next year. And they did. They came and spoke. And then the spokesperson went to the city manager and said, sorry I had to say that, but I agree with him. Everybody agrees with us. Everybody with half a brain who has studied this at all agrees with us. They actually supported it. They're fine with it. I think they're going to be fine when I make LED lighting a requirement. But it has to come from the city government. And let me explain why. It's the business model. Unbeknownst to most people, most houses are bought by investors for rentals. You can thank Washington and Section 8 for that, and government subsidies. But it's a business. It's not, it used to be the person who bought the house was going to live there for 30 years. That's not your primary buyer anymore. As a result of that, you've got to look at how the cost is spread. The solar panels is an example. The landlord doesn't pay the electric bill, right? The renter does. The only way this is going to happen is by ordinances changing, because the business model pushes against it. It has to be built into the cost of the house. Same thing with LED lighting. I switched out all the lights in my house to LED lighting. Do you know how expensive that is? That was a several $1,000 investment for lights. Now, those lights will be shining when they have the wake at the house, when I die. I mean, they never go out. They are a good investment. It's a long-term investment. But who buys the light bulbs in a house? The person who bought the house, not the builder. The builder doesn't want to make that investment. He's okay with it if everybody has to do it. But he cannot compete if he's the only one doing it. That's why it has to be done by ordinances. If you want this planet to have a chance, everyone in this room has got to start pressing on local officials, because I honestly believe that's the only way. You know, we could drop
where it does break down, where infrared has an advantage is tonight, as these suspects were going under trees and things. With infrared, you can still see them.
Thank you. Is your backup storage capacity on a par with the IRS hard drive email capacity?
I will guarantee you ours is not.
And of the 3 suspects that were captured in this particular very effective video, thank you for presenting that, will they now be released under misdemeanors if Prop 47 passes?
I'll have to check with the detective on that, Mr. Brown, and I can get back with you. I'm not quite sure yet.
Well, thank you for your time, and your report is very enlightening and informative.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
We will move on now with the California Highway Patrol update. Officer Hernandez, good morning.
Good morning. Just start with our fatal statistics. Our fatal accidents are still down. We're still at 22% negative compared to last year. One of the ways we're actually achieving that is by enforcement. Our enforcement is up by 27%. Just in the month of September, there was over 2,500 citations issued. Over 400 motorist services that were issued to the community. So not all contacts result in a citation. Over 460 people were actually assisted by the Highway Patrol, whether it's on city roads or on unincorporated roads, freeways, and they were provided assistance to get to their destination. Our DUI traffic collisions are up by 13%. However, our DUI arrests are also up by 22%. So there was more people drinking out there. Some were actually being involved in accidents, but there's a lot more that were actually being arrested, so apprehended before they crashed. In the month of September, we had National Safety Car Seat Week. We hosted an event at Sam's Club, and Highway Patrol has car seat technicians that go through training, 5 days of training to become experts on this. And we inspected 45 car seats in 6 hours. Over 90% of those car seats were installed incorrectly. So we were working. There was only 4 of us there as technicians, and so you can just do the math. And we did 45 car seats. Throughout the year, from October of last year to September of this year, we installed over 480 car seats here in the Antelope Valley. And based on my experience, I attended every event. Again, over 90% of the seats were installed incorrectly. and unfortunately, car crashes are no more killer for that age from newborn to 12 years of age. So we will continue with that program. Later on this month, for Red Ribbon Week, we'll be hosting 2 events. One in partnership with the AV Mall, where they're doing a team safety clinic, and we will be promoting the DUI, alcohol, drugs, and distracted driving, and the importance of them. California has had a pretty rough week. We've lost 10 people in a matter of days, mainly in Orange County. 9 out of those 10 who died were teens, under the age of, I think the oldest was 17. So, and the youngest was 14. So, and we'll continue to combat that through education and enforcement.
Just out of curiosity, with those 90% that were incorrectly fastened in, was there a pattern or something in particular that surfaced?
Most parents do not read the manual, either the car seat manual or the vehicle manual. And what happens is the seatbelts have a retractor, and it can be when you hit your brakes pretty hard, slam your brakes, or you find yourself locked in there, you kind of just give it a little bit of way, it releases. Well, that retractor has the capability to be permanently locked. That's why pulling the seatbelt all the way out, get it nice to the top, and then you can repair the ratchet. Most of the parents that we've encountered do not lock their seatbelts. Others, they're using both systems. They're using the seatbelt and the latch system, and the cover covers at the bottom, thinking that the more the merrier. It's not the case. So there's, or they're installing their car seat in the back seat, middle rear of the back seat, using the latch system. What those vehicles do not accommodate that middle portion or that middle seat rear to use that component. There's a certain distance that those latches have to be, and any wider than that, it actually compromises the effectiveness of that vehicle. So there's a little bit of everything, but mainly it's the seatbelts. All the cars are being expired for that matter.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Will you touch a little bit more in regards to the expiration date?
Yes. Before the law passed, the new law passed in 2012, the cars only had a lifespan of 6 years. And that was from date of manufacture, 6 years from that point. With the new law going into effect of 8 years old or being 4'9", car seats have an expiration of 6 years all the way up to 10 years. So it's very important that you look at your car seat. There's a label on it, and there's a label in the box as well, on the exterior portion of the box, that has the serial number, model number, date of manufacture, and expiration date. So, and obviously out here, why is it important out here in the Allen Valley? We have both extremes. We have very cold, and then we have a very hot weather. That compromises the integrity of that plastic. So I always tell parents, when you have a table out there, your plastic table or patio table, and you leave it there for a couple months, put something on it, it just shatters, it breaks apart. This plastic is not as fragile. However, it does get compromised. So there's a lifespan. Car seats should never be passed on from one person to another, from one child to another.
Officer, what is the weight limit for a child that's getting older these days, as far as going from a transitional car seat to a lap chair car seat type?
Each car seat is going to have its own weight limitations. There's car seats that are a little bit complicated, but let's take, for instance, an infant car carrier. In the past, they used to only accommodate up to 25 pounds. The minimal requirement is to keep both rear-facing 20 pounds or 1-year-old. Well, now these infant carriers can actually accommodate up to 35, 40 pounds. And that's because we're encouraging parents to keep their children rear-facing for as long as they can. Along with that, there's a seat called convertible. You can use this car seat as a rear-facing mode. Again, it's going to have a sticker, and it varies from model to model, or from manufacturer to manufacturer. Some of these car seats can go up to 50 pounds rear-facing. So after they exceed that 50-pound weight limitation of rear facing, they can turn it around to rear facing, and then that car seat can go up to 80 pounds. And the boosters can go up to 120. So each car seat is going to have its own weight limitation.
Thank you, officer.
As a relatively new grandfather, this is great information to know, because it's been a lot of years since I've had little ones in car seats. So.
And you can always, this is a service that we offer on a weekly basis. It's free to the community, and we do it at the office every week. We have technicians that are just out there for us today. I have 2 of my senior volunteers that we just certified. They're out there installing car seats. So the more we can do, the safer the children will be.
Thank you very much. From the District Attorney update, Mr. Stephen Franklin.
Good morning. Looking at the Antelope Valley statistics, and again, it's all of Antelope Valley, just not Lancaster. But in the AV, we filed 388 felony complaints for September. And that's on par essentially with the San Fernando branch, which is at 362, and Van Nuys, which actually is more at 430. We filed 712 misdemeanor cases for the month of September, and the next closest is Compton, which was ahead of us at 780. Interesting hearing talking about the car seats. We had we did get a conviction last week on someone who was had alcohol and PCP in their system. They drove into a vehicle where the 18-month-old girl was in fact in her car seat, but he was going at such a speed that she did not survive. That was in the press. I assume most of you probably saw that. Very tragic case. We actually put the car seat into evidence when we were prosecuting the case. But we received a second-degree murder conviction on that, and we continue, and I've had several training sessions with the CHP, and we've also met with sheriffs that if there's a death and the driver is DUI, it is entirely possible that you're going to be charged with what's called implied malice murder or second-degree murder. Everybody knows that driving under the influence can relate to that. We also had the dog mauling case, which was they were sentenced to 15 to life. So again, we've got a hard group of young attorneys that are really doing what they can for the community here. Also, I took the liberty of having one of my law clerks come up with, glance through what we discussed briefly last week, the Prop 47. I looked up the funding. It hasn't gotten, the opposition hasn't really gotten a lot of funding. But I wanted to make it a little bit clearer exactly what the proposition entails. So the first page, the law clerk went on and summarized the proposition, and then he took from the internet from the government ballot website what Prop 47 is, and then I also had him attach the actual text. So you should all have that. One error I see on his Prop 47 is he has resentencing, or if you've previously been convicted of a serious or violent offense. As I read the actual language, I think it's only violent offense, and serious crimes are not necessarily violent crimes. Violent crimes are serious crimes. Serious crimes aren't always violent crimes. Probably the most predominant would be residential burglary. That's considered just a serious crime. So that would not prevent somebody being resentenced under this proposition as I read it. And then speaking just as a private citizen at this point, because I'm not sure what my office has stated what their opinion is on this proposition. But again, as a private citizen, I think that, and somebody who's very concerned about the AV and has worked here for quite a while now, and I'm very much dedicated, as are my troops, to protecting the citizens here. It appears to me this is social engineering by the proponents to essentially minimize the seriousness of drug possession and theft-related crimes. Obviously here in the AV, people realize they have a right to be safe for their own personal safety, and they have a right to be safe, their property to be safe. And this appears to undermine the rights of law-abiding citizens, as I can see it. As you can see, my law clerk does have this correct here as far as check fraud. It ups it up, to $950. Otherwise, it's going to be a misdemeanor. Usually, check fraud, forgery, that's sophisticated stuff, and that would be straight misdemeanors. Drug possession, you can see some of the drugs there. That's not all inclusive. Obviously, we don't want a valley here where people are running around on drugs all the time, and clearly we don't want our high schools and middle schools to. I don't think having a law such as this would again minimizes the effect of having possession of some of these drugs, especially the more harsh ones, the heroin, the cocaine, certainly the LSD. Petty theft, property worth less than $950. It used to be if you stole a firearm or other things, there is farm animals up here and so forth. If the animals are worth less than $950, it's straight misdemeanor. Petty theft with prior related conviction, right now as it is, if you have 3 prior petty theft convictions, writing's pretty clear on the wall that you're not going to be rehabilitated. So the 4th one can in fact be filed as a felony. This would eliminate that option, and basically you would be able to shoplift with impunity. Receiving stolen property, same. It's $950. No longer do we have the option of making it a felony or a misdemeanor. And shoplifting, so entering the Walmart, like we just saw the 4.5-minute video, I'm sure, obviously they went in there for the purposes of stealing $350 worth of items. It then takes immense resources to capture these individuals. It takes the air unit, it takes men on the ground and women on the ground. And according to this new law, it would be a straight misdemeanor. So I don't claim to be an expert on it, but it doesn't appear to me, looking at it, that this is good for this community. I would also indicate that there is a resentencing component, which it is retroactive. So unless, as I see it, you have that prior violent felony, they could go back, resentence, and if you were sentenced to prison, you'd come back, get your time served, and out the door. So I do think it's something that certainly this commission may want to look at and take a position on. And barring any questions, that would conclude my presentation.
Any questions, comments? Thank you very much.
I do have, I wanted to ask one thing. Has the City Council taken a position with respect to whether they're going to support or oppose this? It's a proposition. Thank you.
It'll be up on the November ballot.
Has the City Council taken a position on that, Mr. Christ?
We have not, but I think on the sign of 47 and what it does to our community, I personally wouldn't be acceptable, or nor am I going to vote for 47, because what it will handcuff our deputies, it'll handcuff the district attorney, and it will release more criminals on the streets because of the resentencing, and it'll be very destructive to the city of Lancaster.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to Business Watch Subcommittee, Public Safety Update. Mr. Dorico.
Thank you, Dr. Vieira. Just a comment on that too, as well. As this proposition is being billed as like a schools support type proposition. So I think that's the important thing in bringing this, and I'm glad Mr. Franklin brought that out to this forum, to get that out to the community that it is not what it represents itself to be. And again, as we talk about crime every month in these meetings and what law enforcement is facing in the prosecutor's office, it's like we keep getting tripped up in our efforts here with things that have occurred over several years now with non-revocable parole and then this early release process, the lack of funding the county provides to the sheriff's department to maintain incarceration of folks up to their normal sentencing. An average sentencing now for 180 days in the county jail is about 18, 19 days. Okay, so these things that were constantly reoccurring out in our community, and Jim has information that we'll bring forward at the next meeting as it relates to that. People with prior criminal history being released back into our communities and committing other crimes. So it's very important, there's this wave of a mindset with adults that we've always applied to juveniles. Okay, juveniles we look more as delinquency, and we're trying to change a behavior before they becomes, delinquency versus criminality. But we're applying some of that same methodology now to adults, as though that there's no impact. Narcotics is a perfect example. I will guarantee you, people with issues with drugs don't understand who all our burglars are. Who's committing the robberies, who's doing those home invasion robberies, who's stealing at the store, who's doing those things. And I can tell you from my experience in law enforcement, there's a direct nexus to narcotics. You want to impact your community's larceny rate, and then you impact your narcotics rate in your community. You want to impact your gang activity, you impact your narcotics issues that you have in your community. So there is a direct tie to all that. But enough on that issue. I'm going to let Jim talk about Business Improvement Group and an update on that, and then I'll just bring you up to speed on a few things we're doing in public safety.
Thanks, Lee. The Business Improvement Group meeting for this month is October 30th for 10th and K, or 10th West and Avenue K. It'll be at 10:30 to 11:30 at Stanley Kleiner Building in Lancaster City Park. For Valley Central Way, it'll be 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. at the Homewood Suites over on Double Play Way. For East Avenue J, it'll be from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. here in City Council Chambers. And then our meeting for Lancaster Boulevard is always with the regular Lancaster Boulevard Association meeting, and that's on the first Tuesday of every month at 8 a.m. here in Council Chambers. We're getting some assistance from a former commissioner, Sandy Smith, with the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce. Sandy has offered to help disseminate information to the members of the chamber who are in these areas by email and other communication methods that the chamber has. So hopefully that'll help us with attendance just a little bit. We're also in the process of setting up separate meetings with property owners and property managers. One of the things that we've noticed at these buildings is somehow there's a little bit of a pecking order that happens, and the property owners and the property managers don't want to come to the same meetings that their tenants are at, because I guess they're afraid their tenants will cause additional issues for them. So we're trying to be sensitive to that to see if we can set up separate meetings where they can attend. Also, the other thing that I'd like to just thank the businesses in these areas for, particularly those that are beginning to become more aggressive with private security. In those areas where we've seen private security, we've seen a marked decline in the Part 1 crimes. The area down around 10th Street West and Avenue K, we've actually seen some evidence that the private security in those locations is beginning to push out some of the area or some of the folks from the areas to maybe some of the surrounding areas. So it's an interesting phenomenon to observe. Over on Valley Central Way, they're doing an excellent job too. One of the security companies over there actually ran sweeps to move out some of the problem personalities that they had over there. First person that they contacted last Thursday in the first sweep was a parolee at large for he was on for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So it's good that the business owners are starting to take ownership of their property. We're really beginning to focus with that now at the folks over on East Avenue J, because there still doesn't seem like there's a big consensus over there. And essentially that's it for the business improvement groups.
Jim, that's very, very interesting. Quick question. With regards to the private security, is it more the presence there, or is there specific tactics that they use, or what do you attribute that to?
What you have to understand, Dr. Vieira, is that some of the private security companies have a process where they just want to observe and report. And those security companies have not been very effective in doing what they're doing. What we're seeing with, particularly in some of the areas out there, they're going with the armed security officers who are all certified, who are all trained, and they know what the limits of their authority are, and they're very assertive about taking ownership of the property. And of course, if we go back to the broken windows theory, which this city has thoroughly embraced, we know for those places that take ownership of their property, crimes don't happen on those properties, or relatively, or they have a lower frequency than other places. So we're really excited to see that, and it sets up a good partnership between the private security companies and the Sheriff's Department, because that sweep that we talked about last week was coordinated directly with the Sheriff's Department, and they had deputies that were available if they needed them.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, and then Jocelyn, are you still here? Yes. Okay, Jocelyn Corbett is the Assistant City Attorney here. I just want to introduce her to the Commission. Jocelyn's working very closely with the Public Safety Office with us on updating some of our municipal codes, okay, and making them more relevant to issues that we're having currently, to bring them up to speed. Specifically, we've worked very closely regarding our chronic nuisance ordinance, and currently we're working on a new graffiti cost model that's been required based on the upper court decision from the Lewis M. decision. Based on the real interesting issue that's come to light now on a case that's been on hold for almost 3 years with graffitiing, Amy Vasquez is working very closely with the deputies from the Sheriff's Department, the Land Cap team, as well as we're working with Palmdale on a significant case of a pretty notorious tagging crew, TDK, that painted the cities up to, between both cities, is well over $1 million worth of damages. And 10 defendants, we're working with 10 defense attorneys on this case, and 1 DA from the juvenile court, not in Mr. Franklin's office. I will tell you there is a distinct difference on graffiti cases, how they're handled from Mr. Franklin's office in the adult court versus what we're dealing with in the juvenile court. But we have an excellent judicial judge in juvenile court with Denise McLaughlin Bennett, and she's been working with us very closely, so we're working through that process. But this is an interesting case, just from the fact on how the plea was originally taken and then trying to now assign responsibility to 10 individual defendants. So it's consumed a lot of our time. But we're almost to reintroducing that cost model by ordinance to the City Council, and then we'll be in compliance now with the case decision that's come from the upper court, and we're looking forward to finalizing that. Something I've been talking with Captain Nelson on, and some with Lieutenant Harris here, is, filling those gaps between what is a reasonable call for a Sheriff's Department handle versus something from our Public Safety Office to handle versus in neighborhood disputes and neighborhood issues that really don't rise to that level of being an actual criminal type response criminal issue and that resource being utilized where we need the resources of the deputies in other places to combat crime, and trying to retrain our public on when it's more appropriate to call with us and have us manage those issues. An example of that is we've been very successful with the mediation program that we've been utilizing that came from the Tapestry Commission in dealing with neighborhood disputes, and we've probably got like about a 99% success rate. I can only think of one case that went beyond the mediation aspect of it where it wasn't resolved, that we had to elevate that issue. So that process has worked really well. So again, trying to better utilize the resources that we have in law enforcement in the community to more actively deal with our criminal issues versus dealing with more neighborhood issues or more quality of life type issues that's more appropriate for us to manage. Excited to talk about you heard our presentation from my son Brett and the Antelope Valley Education Alliance. We right now currently have 37 students that are actively participating in that program that have been to school every day for almost 3 weeks now that we've been in place, and every class period. We've only had 2 other students that chose not to participate, so we elevated that case beyond what this program is. We're going to be expanding that now, which will create a burden for Jim with his community youth court, and may have some impact also through the juvenile court with our teen court aspect of things and how they want that managed. So we're very excited about the direction it's taking. And Nigel Holly, who was also here, Nigel's doing a fine job coordinating that mentorship aspect. We were going to only do it 2 days a week. We've already had to expand that to 4 days a week, based on the number of participation, and the parents are completely buying in, and that's been excellent. I can say we've had 2 city events since we last met. The Streets of Lancaster event is a pretty involved event here for all of us here in this room. A 3-day event. We only had 1 misdemeanor arrest that occurred out of the 3 days, and that issue had to do with a person who was harassing some of our sheriff explorers to extreme to the point where he had to be dealt with. But that's about it. Bark in the park, as always, was not an issue. Other than not even an unruly dog. So we call here at the city, this is our 100 days of fun as we move through our our event season, and as always, these are something we think are great for the community to participate. We want to see folks out there come and do our city events. We're quite proud of what we're able to do here. That's all I have.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
One question for Lee.
Yes.
Hopefully it's a thing of the past. So what did TDK stand for?
I couldn't tell you at this point.
She's been involved.
Oh, Amy, go ahead.
Actually, SDK, and it's a foul word.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry, my mistake. Okay. There's so many tagging crews, and honestly, I don't think people realize what kind of resource impact graffiti has. So it's almost viewed at times as we deal with the defendant's attorneys as though this is a minor thing. But it's millions of dollars a year that impacts our region. And those are resources that we could be utilizing for after-school programs for kids, or other intervention programs, or things that we could do through Parks and Rec, type of things like that, that we are impacted financially, significantly in the community. The community has a right to be made whole. And that's the thing we're always trying to convey as we go through these restitution process with the court, is that the community has a right to be made whole. This is not something that's just acceptable for us.
No, that was my other question about the restitution, which is rarely paid. Does the city go after them civilly?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, in this case, because they're all adults now, and so they would have probably been released from probation at this time based on their sentencing, that's the avenue we will have to take.
Thank you.
Congratulations to your son on his truancy program. Hopefully he can work himself out of a job.
No, I hope not. I think the thing is the cost is almost scary. Dr. Fries at the district office is running those attendance records every day, and for all the sites, and we're trying to really get control of that district-wide. It has a ridiculous impact on how the state funds schools is still, from my time on the school board, is still a bizarre concept to me. I still want to know what the state does with the money they don't pay to the schools for lack of attendance, because I have no idea where that goes. So.
Joe,
I had a follow-up question to the Prop 47 issue. Looking at what the changes that are proposed, let's say one forges a check to steal a gun to rob someone. Are these all separate misdemeanors? Or are they gang together and made a felony at that point?
Law school question. I mean, we could get creative and, a conspiracy to commit a robbery, so something like that. So we would make it where we would try and funnel the cases under conspiracy theory to try, forging a check to buy a weapon to commit the robbery. But the robbery is what's going to have all the teeth in it.
Because the reason why I'm asking is because with Lee just stating that the average duration of a misdemeanor crime prison term is 18 days. That's a lot of things that can occur. And I'm asking a question really for the public to understand that at $950, there's a lot of stuff that can go on per misdemeanor violation under this proposition that they simply won't be able to afford after a while. Businesses won't be able to afford it after a while. This measure is going to cost the public money. Outside of the legal aspects, it's going to dig into the community's pocket.
I think that's a very astute observation. Your mom-pop liquor store, for instance, those people aren't getting rich. They're just getting by. And if it's open doors to steal whatever you want and knowing that there's no ramifications, they might as well just have a line. Here's the free stuff. Come take it. And with the incarceration rate, as Lee appropriately pointed out, they're going to be back at the liquor store every couple weeks, even if they were given the max of 180 days turnaround. This is an ill-conceived proposition, and again, as I indicated, I think it personally, it's just a form of social engineering under the guise of trying to make the schools a better place, which is just pure fraud. How in the world can schools be a better place if you're going to minimize drug possession? Certainly, we do that enough with our marijuana laws and so forth with medical marijuana, and this just further decreases the severity of drugs. And that's the worst thing I can see in school, and so to think for a moment that this is going to benefit the school or community is nonsense. But its billed as, I believe, safe streets and safe schools are a real misnomer.
Thank you.
We're on to public business from the floor, non-agendized. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the commission on any item not on the agenda. State law prohibits the commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff, and speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. We do have one speaker card for non-agendized. Ms. Maria Pisano.
I came here today not only to have my hearing regarding the confiscation of my property and vehicle under the provisions of Section 22852 VC, which I have been denied multiple times for, even jailed for, but also to discuss the city, police, and government agency abuse of power and corruption that accompanies and allows these unlawful, deceitful acts to take place. But for purposes of these time constraints, since I never know if I will be allowed to talk or arrested, I will discuss the most recent atrocity, but would also request that I be allowed to testify in regards to many interrelated issues responsible for what is happening to our city, country, and world. After forced from my home by police and in these neighborhood watch spies and thieves, and all my things put into storage, which were ruined and stolen, I was not allowed to, and my vehicle impounded then, and my phone stolen because of things they claimed that I was found to be posting. I found myself living under a tree in my vehicle. The city and police came multiple times, well, a few times, to tell me that I was not allowed to stay there. I told them that I had nowhere that I could go, that I needed to find, it was, 100 and some odd degree heat out. So the tree gave me some shade. The first thing that I got was a phone call from someone from the city, although it came under a blocked call, so I couldn't tell if it came from the city or from the police department. From the police department saying that people were saying, or they got a call from some female saying that I was going to kill myself and that they needed to speak with me, but they wouldn't come to the area that I was at. They wanted me to drive my vehicle, which I have an outstanding, not ticket, but money that I have to pay on a ticket, which I thought had been taken care of. My license was supposed to be renewed in the mail, but someone stole my license as well. Anyway, I had these mental health issues, supposedly, and they insisted that I drive to them so I would be on the highway. And I kept saying, please come to where I'm at, but they wouldn't do that. Then there was the area next door, the church deal next door, where I went to and saw things that were happening over there, such as assault on people there, that I had said something about, which that's when it really started in, with the city coming and saying that they wanted me out of there, that I couldn't stay there any longer because of what I was posting about that. I got to try and hurry here. What it ended up happening is, can I please finish speaking?
Sorry.
Please, you guys, don't do this to me again. I come here, this is very important information, please. They confiscated my...
3 minutes is up, Ms. Pisano.
You guys, seriously. They took my vehicle, my 2002 series, which I think that they had gotten approval for in January. Oh, don't do this to me again, really.
Time is up. Thank you very much. Okay, again, Ms. Pisano, your time is up. Okay, we'll move on to commissioner comments. Any comments at this point? Nope. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned, and we will meet again on the 12th of November at 10 a.m. Thank you very much.